Morena Koto, it is 5 to 8 on breakfast. It's been just over a year since our immigration policies started to change, pushing our skills shortage to crisis point in Aotearoa. So how do we turn things around? Joining us now is Shay Peters from Robert Walters. Morena, Shay, thanks for being here. How bad is the skill shortage in New Zealand at the moment?
It's pretty tight in the professional space, and specifically within areas like IT, legal, finance, procurement, risk and compliance. These skill shortages have been growing probably for the last 3 years, and actually now with the new immigration policies, things are being teetered on over the edge.
So how bad is it?
It's pretty bad, and we need to really look at finding ways to supplement the skill set that's already in New Zealand to make sure that we can remain to compete on the global stage.
But have immigration laws really changed that much? Of course, we've seen the changes in the education sector and for those low-level education providers. But where else have they changed?
I think there's a general message going out globally that New Zealand's perhaps a slightly more complex to get into than it used to be. And that PR is not amazing when people are looking to come into New Zealand. I think if we think about the specific areas where the areas have changed, there've only been slight tweaks. But I think the general feeling now is it's a more complex process and it's a longer process for employers to get overseas talent in.
So from a recruiting perspective, when you go to someone overseas and say, hey, come and live in New Zealand, it's actually pretty easy to get in here if you've got the right skills, and it's a great place to live, you'll have a wonderful lifestyle. People still aren't very enthusiastic?
Oh, I think they are. But then they start looking at the immigration process, and if we're looking at areas like IT, the immigration process to get through in that area, you need quite formal qualifications in New Zealand, so the barriers to entry are quite high. In the IT sector, we know that some highly skilled people don't have necessarily the formal qualifications that are recognised by New Zealand.
Yeah.
Correct. And these are really highly skilled people that do well on the global stage.
So how do you go about fixing something like that? Do you make them sit a test?
No, it's actually quite hard, and a lot of organisations now are looking at becoming accredited employers, so they can actually sponsor overseas talent when it comes in, and that's a lot easier. I mean, we do it, our organisation, to help get further recruiters in.
And what other changes might make things a little easier, might reduce the shortage?
I think if we look at the border control process, that's one that specifically, I had a chat to an immigration lawyer the other day, still said is pretty challenging to get through. But I think it's actually finding the talent, getting the talent in, and once they're here, helping them to assimilate into New Zealand culture and society, and keeping them here can be a challenge too.
How important is migration for New Zealand's economy?
Oh, it's hugely important. And if we look at some of the stats, we recently ran a survey, and 67% of hiring managers said that tightening immigration policy will lead to a further skill shortage. And that's going to dent business confidence even more. And that's one thing that we really need to be focusing on. And I think supplementing quality New Zealand skill sets with overseas skill sets is really important for growth.
Okay, if you were in charge, what would you change today?
That's a really interesting question. I think that what I would make sure is that we're still got a very strong vetting process for people coming into New Zealand, but really targeting and looking at those formal qualifications. Do we need those, or is there a better regime to put in place?
Like having accredited employers?
Correct.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks for your time, Shay. Really appreciate it. Shay Peters from Robert Walters.